the SM Media Podcast Network. Hi folks, and welcome to the latest episode of the 80 right here on SM Media. I'm Scott McPike. It's always a pleasure to be your host as always as we take a look back at another weekend of action in the west of Scotland. To join me this week is somebody who had a taste of the west of Scotland, and it's a pleasure to welcome him back onto the show. Please welcome and join me, Martin Fellows.
Thanks for having me back on, Scott.
Pleasure. It's good to have you back. It's been a while since you've obviously been in the West. We've obviously done really well with St Cadox, and action to get back into it. What is that? The hope?
Yeah. I mean, I had a good break from March, end of March into the summer. I had a few opportunities, and I was probably definitely keen to wait till the summer to see what happened in the summer. Again, I had a couple of backroom opportunities that I was determined that I wasn't going to take. I was wanting to wait for the kind of right opportunity, and Chris twisted my arm to go in and help him at Stranraer because he was missing some of the Betfred Cup and it was only meant to be for a couple of games, and I find myself still there at the moment, so really enjoying that different type of role, and really enjoying working with the good people at Stranraer.
You mentioned Stranraer, and I wanted to bring up because there's a wee bit of a kind of West connection. Obviously,
Yeah,
Chris was with you last season at St Cadoc. I remember, I think was it the first game of last season? I think I spoke to you at the Glens
yeah, it
game,
was at
and
Glenafton.
Chris was there. Chris was there,
Yeah,
and that was not long after. I think it was not long before he actually went to Stranraer. I think it was only a couple of
yeah,
weeks after. But I don't think it's coincidental that Stranraer have signed a few players that we maybe know from the west of Scotland, just the likes
yeah,
of like Scott Ruff, Jordan Stewart, a couple of guys that were with you last year at St Cadoc, like Dan
yeah,
McManus, Evan Dunn, obviously for Bede as well, BJ, and Ronan Hughes. Was
yeah.
that something that the guys at Stranraer kind of looked at and thought there was kind of untapped potential in the west who could make the step up to the kind of League Two?
Yeah, it would probably very much a joint exercise. Me and Chris are really, really close. We have been. I was Chris's assistant at East Kilbride a few years
Mm-hmm.
ago. Then, as you say, he came in and worked with me at St Cadox when he left Co-winning. And then, even when he went to Stranraer, I would speak to Chris, every other day about all things Stranraer and all things St Cadox. So, yeah, there probably was a bit of a joint approach there. Some of the players Chris had identified that, he was really keen to bring in and bring in early doors, as you say, Scott Ruff and Jordan Stewart and guys like this. And then, I think when I left St Cadox, it paved the way for Chris to speak to some of the guys there that he was really familiar with, and I spoke to him at great length about some of the boys he was wanting to sign in the West, and there was probably some joined up targets in terms of boys that we were looking at for St Cadox and
Yeah.
that Chris would have been looking at for Stranraer, and it certainly helped him. I think me not being in the West, it let him really go and get his teeth into some of those prospects like Evan Dunn, who's done really well since he
Yeah.
came in. And even Solituri, that as much as he was a Partick Thistle player, he was on loan at
Yeah.
Benburn and stuff like that. So, yeah, he asked me. He was on holiday to miss the Ross County and Partick Thistle game. He asked me to come in and work with him, and I had a couple of other opportunities like that in the summer. And I said to him, look, I was kind of keen to wait in a managerial post, but look, he twisted my arm and said, look, he's going to be away on holiday, and could I help the guys that were going to be left take the team? And I did that, and they were keen for me to stay on. So I've obviously not been found out yet. So I'm sure that'll come.
Yeah, and like in terms of kind of League Two as well, obviously a really competitive league. But how do you kind of look back in last season at St Catherine's and obviously your time at the club? Because like we spoke at the start of last season, we spoke throughout the season as well. And one thing that was really like fascinating to me and impressed me was the way you were kind of approaching the league, because a lot of people do have this myth of the West of Scotland that it's
Yeah.
long ball, just get the ball up to the big guy up front. That wasn't your idea of the game, and I was really impressed with that.
Yeah, no, I look back really fondly. Almost 2 years there. Uh, you know, really proud of what the group in the 2 years managed to achieve, having the guys before us, John and Barry, that got them
Hmm.
promoted into the West Premier, and then to have a really good fist at the West Premier our first season, and then year two, continuing in that vein and developing a few players along the way that'll now be playing SPFL football. Yeah, would have liked us to have been closer in year two to Clydebank, but we kind of set ourselves a points target. And believe it or not, just before we played Clydebank in one of my last games, we actually hit that points per game total that we were aiming for. And we always kind of said if somebody came along and smashed that, then fair play to them. And Clydebank
Yeah,
were, I think Clydebank have shown already in the start of the Lowland League what an excellent side they are. So yeah, would I like to have been closer to them in year two? Absolutely, but proud of what we did in 2 years there on and off the pitch. A lot of work off the pitch in terms of club license
hmm,
and the under 20 setup that we worked really hard with the guys that were there previous and the guys that came in. Yeah, really, really look back fondly, and the club will always have a close place to my heart. So yeah, looking forward to whatever comes next.
and just some of the guys you had kind of last season, like you mentioned about Clydebank, Neil McLaughlin already going to
Yeah,
Clydebank, and I do think already Lowland League they look pretty good. Kieran Diver, like that was a very interesting kind of turn of events going to Johnson Borough and kicking on again. Mark Kelly was there for a bit now at Cali Braves.
yeah,
Jack Breen's now at Camelin, so there's like a really good spread of players, and they're
yeah.
going in different directions. Like, and you mentioned about the guys you've got at Stranraer now. I thought a really good balance in the squad, and like, are you kind of looking at them now and keeping an eye on where they're at the moment?
Absolutely. I speak to most of them on a regular basis. As you say, that some of them have stayed on at St Cadox as well,
Hmm.
and they've had a good start to the season. So it's good to see those guys kicking on. And as you say, the players that are kind of widespread, and as you say, the ones that have come to Stranraer, BJ that me and Chris know really really well,
Yeah.
Daniel McManus, who's still a young player. He played almost every game he was fit for me in the 2 years at St Cadox, and I don't even think he's turned 22 yet.
Hmm.
So, looking forward to seeing him get his first real taste of League Two football. And yeah, Jack Breen started the season really well with Camelin as well, with goals and assists coming in the first few games. So yeah, good to see them all kicking on. Mark McCluckey as well, who joined Boness. Mark had a raft of offers, and spoke to him at length through the summer, and he was really keen to get that right for him and as a young player making his next step. So, and he's done that with Boness. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how these guys go, and who knows, you might find yourself back in at some point and be looking to get utilise those relationships with players that you've had before, just the same way we did when we went to St Cadoc. So
Yeah.
yeah, always keep in touch with the players.
And obviously Gary Moore is in now and kind of stepping up for the twenties in at St Cadox. How do you think he'll do? And how do you, like you mentioned about the club going for their SFA license? Like
Yeah.
it's a big step for the club now, and obviously they'll be looking to be in that top eight. And Gary making his first steps. It's kind of similar kind of way you kind of looked at. Obviously coming from kind of East Kilbride, making that step up into management. And Gary, in terms of management, how do you think he'll do?
Yeah, I think he'll do really well. We worked really close with Gary over the last 2 years. For MD that kept their eye on the under 20s league, you see
Hmm.
the good success they had there with the under 20s team, and Gary kind of headed that up along with the rest of the youth side of the club. So yeah, I think they've recruited well. I think they've mixed that blend of boys from the under 20s, some other young players, utilised some of the experienced guys like Richie McKillen and Dom Slattery and Max Curry, and then they've added with Scott Ferguson and Calvin McGrory, and yeah, guys is making his first steps in management. And it's a brutal league to do it in.
Yeah.
There'll be no easy games, and there'll be no respite. So I'm sure every game or every training session he'll continue to add to the already good experience he's got. And at 4 points for nine, I'm sure is a solid start for them in the league campaign. And as you say, getting into that top eight will be really important. So here's hoping they'll be there or thereabouts coming into the season.
And let's get into the kind of weekend's action again. Like we're at the kind of stage where we're looking at the kind of league shaping up. 3 games in with midweek action as well. That kind of threw some fascinating results. We'll start in the Premier Division. In terms of you kind of know the Lowland League as well. Like at least 7 teams going up, possibly 10.
Yep.
We know there's one target for every club this season. Like,
Yep.
what do you think of the kind of process of the kind of promoted teams? Is it something that you're interested in terms of 10
Yeah,
going up?
absolutely. I think you've done it right, if I'm being brutally honest. There's a
Yeah.
lot of talk the end of the season. And I think the fact that everybody now goes into this season knowing what they have to achieve on and off the pitch in terms of license criteria, which is difficult. And I think a lot of clubs will be trying to cram that process into the next couple of months. But it's a difficult process. It's one that takes a lot of work. We done a lot of work on that even back at East Kilbride, and then followed that into St Cadox, and it is time consuming. It takes a lot of work for a lot of volunteers to make it happen. But I think now the fact that everybody knows what they have to do to get to where to be promoted, I think it's a lot fairer. And I don't buy into the that it's a kind of wasted season with no relegation. I think it could make an exciting finish if you're sitting in ninth, 10th, 11th, getting into that final stretch of the season. There's still a lot to play for. Whereas you could potentially argue that this, if it was a normal season, if you like, in inverted commas, it would, these teams would almost have nothing to play for it
Mhm.
between seventh and 10th in the table. So yeah, I think it's going to be exciting. I've already been out at a few games. I managed to get some games Wednesday. I went to Cumbernauld Colts and Celtic B on Friday, and uh, I'm never happier than when out at a game. So
Yeah.
the West is a fascinating league. So I don't see me taking my eye off that. So yeah, it's going to be exciting, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of teams you'll like to play for.
We have two teams on 9 points so far, and Auchinleck sit on top of the table on goal difference. They won 4-2 away to Atherley. Double from Connor Boyd, goals from Clark and Syme. And I really like what's happening at Troon so far as well. 6-1 home win over winning. It's Auchinleck and Troon that are kind of laying the early markers down.
Yeah, yeah. Troon finished the season really, really strongly. Well, that's not true. They had a strong season all round last year, as we found out in both our league games against them. And Auchinleck, who finished the season in second, recruited well, brought Willie Muir in, experienced goalkeeper, knew they would kick on, and then just below that, the Drum and Johnston Borough. I'll also be expecting to be, fighting for that top spot. So I think you've got a real raft of strong teams that have all strengthened, and it's going to be really, really competitive. And as you say, two teams on 9 points already, which is no easy feat in this division, and the rest of the pack just chasing. So still early days, but I'm sure the table will start to take form in the next 3 or 4 weeks.
If you had said to Adam 7 points for the first three games and scoring two goals and not conceding any, I could have taken that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think non Hope had probably wanted 9, but yeah, it's a really solid start to the league in terms of no goals conceded. Same with Johnston Borough, two really
Yeah.
difficult fixtures to get them started. I went to that game against Cumnock on Wednesday, and that was a really tightly fought fixture. Again, not a lot of goals, in that and their opening games either. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really tight kind of top six, seven, eight, and there'll not be much between any of these teams. But yeah, I think for Johnston Borough and Drum to be playing each other really early on, yeah, it shows where those two teams are at as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
interesting start to the league.
Yeah, absolutely. Good result as well for Hurlford. They had a difficult start, obviously, on opening day, obviously losing, but to beat Glenafton in midweek and then obviously win 2-0 at home to Rutherglen, and that's a really good response after a difficult opening day.
Yeah, we played Hereford in pre-season with Stranraer. They were, as you'd expect from a Dan Henderson team, really
Yeah.
organised, fit, aggressive, and has goals in the team. Lewis Morrison started the season really well as well, and I think when you have goals, it gives you half a chance, and they bounced back from that opening day defeat to Talbot and got themselves a good result against Rutherglen on Saturday. So yeah, good start for them. They started 2 years ago really strongly as well, and I'm sure Darren will be hoping that he can continue that form.
Cumnock in 4 points. They drew 2-2 with Renfrew, but they had a good start. Glenafton winning 2-1 away to Pollock. Goals from Kerr and Mullen. And your old club St Cadox beating Bees 1-0. A goal from McGrory. Like Cumnock, Glenafton, very solid so far. And what you made a kind of St Cadox start?
Yeah, I think it's been a good start. I think the 4 points for 9 certainly a solid start from them. A difficult away venue in Arthurlie, Dunterley. So you have to get a point there to pick up 3 against Beath. I think they'll be pretty happy with that start, and they're still formulating a team. A lot of new players, a lot of younger players moving up to the under 20s, and they'll still be finding their feet. So I think that 4 points for nines is certainly a solid start. Same with Cumnock. I'm sure Swifty would have wanted more from the opening fixtures, but a lot of new signings. a lot of recruitment. They finished the season really, really strong. So just getting that blend of bringing new players in, and again some tough fixtures to open in terms of having the Borough really early on. So and there was not a lot in that game. So yeah, difficult opening fixtures for them. But yeah, I think they'll be reasonably happy with St Cadox and coming up with a solid start with 4 points.
Yeah, I think so as well. We mentioned obviously Lags 1 and 2 and now away to Shots. That's their first point of the season. And you look at that kind of 3 point stage B, they've got 3 points, the Buffs as well. I think the Buffs will be quite disappointed with a 6-1 defeat because they'd shown quite a wee bit so far in the early stages. And then you look kind of below, like Renfrew, Arthurlie, Shots, and Rutherglen all on a point. It's been a difficult start for Pollock, but it's still
Mm.
really early days. But you look at the sides we thought would be sitting kind of top four. They
Yeah.
look pretty good so far.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I wouldn't get too up nor down about your start. We had notoriously bad starts the last 2 years with St Cadox. In fact, both years we only took 3 points from their
Yeah,
opening 12. So, and in year one, we managed to finish just 6 points off Beith. So, yeah, it's the start can be difficult. Players on holiday, new signings, bedding in. Some teams get midweek fixtures, some teams don't have midweek fixtures. So it can be a wee bit of a turbulent few weeks. And I think over the next 2 or 3 weeks, you'll see things start to settle down. You'll see the league table start to take form, and teams will start to get the rhythm a wee bit more. Even you get different people on holiday and injuries, and you always tend to pick up wee niggly injuries through pre-season because of the way you work the players, and that will settle down, I'm sure. So yeah, so it's a few solid starts and a few shaky starts, and now up to those teams that have had shaky starts to go and try and put points to the board.
yep, absolutely. We'll get into the first division where 100% record so far for Arvin Meadow and St Roch's. Very, very similar starts as well. Arvin Meadow and St Roch's both scoring 10 goals. St Roch's winning 5-2 at home to Petershill and Meadow beating Benburb 4-0. Meadow, I thought we can all thought St Roch's have kind of flown under the radar a wee bit in the early stages.
Yeah, some good recruitment done in the summer. Guys like Don McLaren they've brought in, and they've recruited strongly. I watched them in the tournament against the Pollock and Bo'ness games.
Yes.
The Pollock and Bo'ness tournament, sorry. I watched them in there, and they were solid, and James McGrory Park's never an easy place to go to. So yeah, they've recruited well. Jamie, I know really well, good friend. Speak to him quite a lot. A lot of recruitment, a lot of hard work, and a lot of good recruitment. Players like Jojo Gillespie that, I think, in my opinion, are Premier League players that he's managed to bring into the fold. Liao Holding from
Glenafton was that.
Glenafton. Yeah, and they've recruited up the top end of the pitch really well. So yeah, I think, albeit they came from behind in the opening two games,
Yeah.
to go and get the wins. But yeah, really strong start for Jamie in the medal.
I really like what they've done over the summer as well. Ross McKenzie scoring a double at the weekend. I think he's a good bit of business. And you mentioned about St Roch's as well. Like, I think Jack McElveen is a tremendous bit of business for them and scoring another
Yeah,
goal. And they were 2-0 down against Petershill. Like,
yeah. Jack will score goals. He scored goals for others than last year. I know they would have been sorry to lose him. It's quite a coup for the Rock in the first division, and yeah, I think they would have been expecting themselves to be up in the top end of that table after a solid season last year with some good recruitment through the summer. Yeah, so good start for them.
Thornleywood drew 1-1 with Rob Roy. Thornleywood unbeaten as well after three
Yeah.
games so far. Good result for Nielsen. 5-0 home win over Lanark. Double from Ross Ingram, goals from McNabb, Haddle, and an own goal. Ross Ingram coming up for the fourth division, scoring a double for coming for Saltcoats. I think you've got a lot of players kind of that kind of lower level who can make the step up, and just as you have a goal threat, you're going to do
Yeah,
well in any league.
yeah, that's it. If you can score goals, you know, you've got a good chance of winning games. So as you say, they've added that goal threat, and it's so interesting when you look at that first division table in terms of trying to work out because there's no license involved in terms of you look at the Premier and how top eight licensed clubs go up, whereas in the first it's going to be a straight shootout for, I know we're saying eight, but it could be more for who's going to get promoted. So really, really interesting because every team in that division will have their eyes on getting into that, top eight spot. So yeah, I think it's going to if MD was able to call who the top eight are going to be, they'd be a better man than me. So it would be really difficult.
I think if you predict the top eight in there, you should be running the country.
Hi, should be
Like
getting
you,
good money for punditry.
then yeah. But in terms of another team as well, Kilburnie, they've had a good start. I think they've just been solid as well. They drew 2-2 with Cumbernauld, who've also done pretty well in the early stages. Game of the weekend I was fascinated with was Darvel against Gartcairn because I had both Darvel and Gartcairn in my top four at the
Yep.
start of the season. And Gartcairn winning 2-0. I think the management team in there will be tremendous. I think Ryan McStay and Darren Barr, the experience they have. Darvel, I think, have had quite a shaky start. And I'm not really, I'm hoping they can pick up on it. But again, like, they just in a bit of a struggle at the moment. And they just need that kind of win to pep them up. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm sure your prediction with Darvel and Gartcairn in the top four, I don't think it'll be too far away. I watched Darvel in pre-season against Renfrew and they were excellent. You know, really, really good, really strong. They've retained good players there, experienced players, Conor McGlinchey, Cammy Williamson, a player I know really, really well that,
mhm.
in my opinion, could be playing at a higher level. So they added well in the summer. Some good young players, Matthew McFarlane and Blair McDonald, that might be taking a wee bit of time as well to find their feet. But I think they'll be there or thereabouts. And again, I know Mick will be really disappointed with his opening fixtures, but being there, when you lose those opening fixtures and you're just desperate to get more games to get points on the board. And I think once they do get points on the board, they will start climbing that table and start kicking on. And the good thing for Darvel is, with there being 8 playoffs or 8 promotion spots, you know, a poor start doesn't necessarily mean they're going to have a poor season. There's plenty of time for them to go and get points on the board and kick on.
And I think people underestimate as well just the kind of job that Mick had to do when he went in. And like we know what Mick Kennedy had done and Tony had done after that, but Mick Oliver had lost a lot of players, and he's done really well to rebuild them, and it will take a bit of time. And he's very good at that kind of. He done very well with Ashfield at this. It just
Yeah.
starting slowly and then building them into something that they became. I mean, they were sensational with Ashfield. I thought so. I think it will take a bit of time, but I think they will get there.
Yeah, I mean, I think they had a point in the season last year where they looked as if they were going to stay up and they were picking
Hmm.
up good points and they had the great cup form.
Yeah.
And, they actually went to a game towards the end of the season when they beat St Cadox 5-0
Yes.
down at Recreation Park. And I remember leaving that night thinking, I think they'll stay up, they'll get the results needed. And they just never quite got the performance levels or the luck required at the final stage to stay up. So when you do take that knock and you get relegated and you've got to rebuild and you've got to kind of pick everybody back up, it can be difficult. So as you say, Mix had to do a lot in there, but it's an attractive club, Darble. A lot of good people. They look after you down there. Even when you play them in the post-match hospitality, the
Mm.
pitches. I know they had a period there where the pitch was struggling, but the pitch has improved. Done a lot of
Yeah.
work on that. So it's an attractive club if you're a young player, and I think that's what Mick's done. He's went and got a mixed experience and younger players to prove themselves. And yeah, I think they will kick on. Mixed experience now. He's got a good backroom team there, good people off the pitch, and most importantly, they've got good players there. So just the opening 2 or 3 games, you don't become bad players overnight. I'm sure they'll
No,
kick
certainly
on
not.
and they'll start to climb the table.
Certainly not. While it's two, Muir Cup two, and again, while it's sitting 3 points, they've drawn their first 3 games, so they're hoping to turn that into wins. But you can't ask for any more solid than that. And Muir Cup 2 points with 3 games, they'll on our side who'll kick on. Ardrossan, I think, have had a good start. They won 3-0 against Vale of Clyde. I think a lot of people forget just that Ardrossan how well coached they are.
Yeah, yeah, no, they are. They are. They've been solid over the last few years. They put that new pitch down and building a wee bit more in terms of the off pitch side of things. But yeah, they're always solid and they'll be fighting to be up the top end of that table as well. So and Ross's team from your cup continue to punch above their weight. They've come
Yeah,
into the first division now and they were the surprise package last year and I really hope they're the surprise package this year. With Ross and Marty down there. So again, a lot of young players that continue to improve, and I think Ross has done really well to keep prying eyes away from his young side, and I think that shows that what he's built down there and the togetherness they've got, that he's managed to keep that young team, the young hungry team together, and yeah, hopefully they kick on as well.
yeah, absolutely. We'll move into the second division. Les Mahago have had 2 wins for 2 games. They sit in 6 points, but obviously Cambuslang and Bellshill have had 9 points from 3 games. Cambuslang winning 5-1 at home to Bonnet and hat-trick from Carlos Lyon. Bellshill winning 3-1 against Maryhill. Graham Gracie scoring a double. And obviously we mentioned as well Les Mahago beating Kilsyth Athletic 2-0, a double from Twaddle. Three sides with a 100% record. And they're three
Yep.
sides that I think very different thoughts going into the season, but we know Darrell going into Les Mahago, Bells Hill, I think, have recruited well, and Cambuslang have kind of come from nowhere.
Yeah, great start for Paul's team. 11 goals scored already
Yeah.
in 3 games, and they done well to stay away from that. They were kind of swirling around that relegation spot for a wee bit last season, and I was delighted to see them stay up. And they've started really really strongly. And back to us talking about having goals, they've got goals in that team. They've got match winners, and I think Cambuslang are a big club. They've kind of been had a tough few years and found themselves now in the second division, but a really really solid start for them. And Bells Hill and Thorn exactly the same. Bells Hill, Thorn haven't come up. Now into the second division. If they can go and get another promotion, it would be quite an unbelievable feat to go and get themselves into the first division at the first time asking. So yeah, really tight division. I know there'll be a few teams in there disappointed with their start, and yeah, luckily there's a long way left to go and recover for that.
Already, that's looking like a very competitive league. Like we mentioned, Thorn, three games they're unbeaten after 3 games. They beat Kilsyth Rangers 3-1. Greenock as well, good start for them. They won 2-1 away to Caledonian Locomotives. Lark Hall winning 2-0 as well away to Fourth. Thrieve Rovers, good start for them, winning 4-2 against Ashfield. And Blantyre 3-0 away to Maybole. And you look at those sides and they're already beginning to be a wee bit of like, yeah, this could be quite interesting with kind of some of the sides there, and you look at kind of first to ninth already, and maybe in a couple of sides that could come up for there as well. But
Yeah.
it's already looking quite interesting that league.
Yep, absolutely. I know. Just looking at the table there, the Caledonian Locomotives will be disappointed with their start. I know the guys there really well.
Mm-hmm.
Danny and Gav that take them out. My young brother's just, or my younger brother has just signed with them through the
Mm-hmm.
summer. So I know they've got good aspirations to compete in that league, and did a difficult game against Greenock at the weekend, and they came off on the wrong end of that. And I'm trying to remember who their first game out was against. Was it Bells Hill? I think it
Yeah, I
was.
think Bills will beat them 5-3. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think there was goals and red cards and all sorts in that game.
and we're
So
down to 9 men. Yeah, I heard.
yeah, so I know they'll be disappointed with their start. Ross at Blantyre, I'm sure will be relatively positive, 4 points for six. Having come down and recruited well, and Ross had to deal with a lot last year in terms of points deductions and losing players, and having to deal with everything that came at them. So their aim will be to get back into the first division. A solid start for them, and then a few teams with changes in management. Coolside Rangers, Coolside Athletic, Ashfield, all changes in management through the summer. A lot of change, a lot of recruitment, and have a difficult start. So yeah, they'll be trying to get themselves, climbing up off that table off of 0 points.
Glasgow Uni sit top of the third division with 9 points. They won 1-0 away to Fanat. Uni teams are very difficult to assess at this early stage because we don't really know until kind of early September who they've got.
Yep.
But one thing you look at from last season is they seem to have a lot of the same players for last year.
Yeah, they've started well. Started well. I think it's Mark Adams that takes Glasgow Uni, who's got.
It's James McCauley.
Is it? It must have been. Oh, I think Mark was maybe Strathclyde. Anyway, I can't remember.
Mark was there a couple of years ago, I think. Yeah,
Was he? Yeah,
yeah.
so Mark had been at Broomhill and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know much about Glasgow Uni, if I'm being honest. I always see their games on the Friday night. I think they play at Airdrie, so an attractive place to go and play a football if you're a young student. And the Port and Keller Rovers have started really well also. The Port on 6 points for 9, so they'll be happy for that. Did they come up from the fourth last year? They did, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, so having come up the leagues. I think it shows the amount of teams that are after a few games sitting up the top end of their tables after having been promoted. The Port, Thorn, Knightswood, all these teams that are coming up that are still have ambitions to go and compete up the top end. So yeah, I don't know too much about it. I know Glasgow United have obviously recruited
I was going to ask you about them.
numbers
Yeah,
and
like that's
summer.
a fascinating kind of turn of events here as well. Like a first win of the season, 4-2 away to Luga.
Yep.
David Goodwillie scored a hat trick. Like Effie Ambrose going there. Like it's. I would
It
love to
is.
go in there and do like. I remember I said that last week as well. Do you remember when Harry Redknapp just get the band back together for a documentary series? I'd love to
Aye,
do that at Glasgow
aye,
United.
aye. Paul Merson and all
Aye,
that.
like Neil Ruddock
Aye,
just coming from nowhere. Like
aye, aye. No, it's really interesting. They've recruited obviously experienced Premiership players. Actually, I know one of the younger players or I say younger, he's not younger anymore, but I had him under 20s. Conor Dunlop was playing for them as well, so I was talking to him a wee bit about it. That they're quite surreal playing with Effie Ambrose. So yeah, no, interesting, a good start for them as well. 3 points on the board at six. goals in their team, and David Goodwillie and Templeton. So yeah, again, there's so much to play for in terms of getting promoted. So it's going to be really interesting to see, how teams continue to recruit over the course of the season if they're still in with a mix of being in that top eight. So yeah,
Yeah, that's very interesting. Just some of the results in that league as well. Kello are in second, 1-2-1 away to Perthshire. Port Glasgow, Yoker, Knightswood, Craigmark, Easterhouse and Dalry, all in 6 points. Glenvale in three. Ardee obviously as well lost at the weekend. And as well, like St Anthony's as well, Perthshire, still looking for their first points of the season. But again, that's looking like a really competitive league as well. Knightswood, I think they've kind of shown that was a good result for them at the weekend. Easterhouse beating Yoker 4-1, ending their unbeaten run. But looking into the fourth division, Killucanav and Vix lead there with 9 points, and they're two sides that you feel should be playing higher, and the kind of way they've started probably will be playing higher.
yeah. Again, really competitive league. EKYM have entered into it as well. They're one of my local clubs.
Mm-hmm.
My dad played amateur with them for years there, and I got a lot of close friends and people involved down there. So it's great to see them in the West. I think when they find their feet, they'll be a huge addition, on and off the pitch. Won the Caledonian League last year. So, they've got real quality. Maybe just a wee bedding in period for them in terms of
And
that opening few fixtures. I think they'll be disappointed. They've got experienced players there like Barry Russell, that's played a lot of Lowland League football and SPFL football,
yeah,
albeit towards the end of his career back, he played EKYM amateur as a young player. So yeah, great to see them in. And then obviously Barry's in at Rossvale and they've had quite a solid start. A lot of change at EK Thistle as well, my other local team.
yeah,
Uh, and they've had a solid start, 4 points for their opening two fixtures. So yeah, really interesting league. We played Eglinton as well last year in the cup, who were a solid side. So yeah, great league, fourth division. A lot of teams in there that aren't paying wages, and it's down to enjoyment and trying to give players an opportunity and put players in the shop window. So it's an interesting league. And as you
yeah.
say, there's some old school clubs in there like Saltcoats and Irvine Vicks. Stevie's went into Saltcoats at a difficult time there, and seems to be getting a good tune out of them now. So that's great to see. He's a good guy. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and interesting to see how that league takes shape.
Yeah, and obviously just some of the results there. Vale leaving beating Saltcoats 4-0. Wishaw drawing 1-1 with BSC. BSC unbeaten after 3 games. I think that's a really good return for them. We mentioned obviously East Kilbride 3, YM 3, East Kilbride Thistle 3 as well. So good money's worth in East Kilbride Derby. Royal Albert beating West Park 2-1, and Stuart McAlpine scoring a hat trick for Eglinton, a 5-0 away win against St Peters. And Rossvale going to Campbelltown and winning 2-0. So it's looking pretty good. And as we mentioned over the weekend, just goals. Like that's what you want at this level. You
Yeah,
just want goals, and that's what we're getting. In
absolutely. I see
terms
the
of
EKYM EK Thistle game. I think EK Thistle were 3-0 up and it finished three
yes,
each.
yes.
So that's seen. I seen on Twitter as well how good a crowd there was there.
Hmm.
For a fourth division game.
People are
Getting a good.
fascinated as well. Like an East Kilbride
Yeah,
Derby, the fourth division of West of Scotland. Like it's
absolutely.
interesting, isn't it? Like it's
First time ever, two clubs that one's been amateur and one's been junior for
yeah,
a long, long time. Juniors doesn't exist now, and EK Thistle move into the West, and so do the YM. So quite amazing those two clubs meeting for the first time in an official fixture. There's been a million friendlies over the years. I would say friendlies there's been a million pre-season games over the years. So really interesting to see that fixture. I'm gutted I couldn't. I went to that. We were up in Forfar, so but I was following that closely to see how that went. So again,
yeah.
we get friends on both sides of the camp down there. So a share of the spoils.
Yeah, absolutely. But just kind of what's coming up, obviously, we've no midweek action this week. Yeah, that'll start again the weekend after. But just some games maybe to touch on that will kind of turn up over the weekend that might be interesting to watch. With two games on Friday night in the second division, third division, sorry, and Auchinleck play St Cadox in the Premier Division as well. You're looking at like Largs, Hurlford, Troonbeath could be quite good. First division, probably the game I'm interested in. Gartcairn Neilston, I think, could be pretty good. And Petershill Thornleywood's worth keeping an eye on. Second division, Blantyre Cambers could be good. Fourth, Bonneton, Threave Kilsyth. So there's games there. Third division, we've obviously Knightswood Lugar, Ardee against Girvan, and Craigmark play Port Glasgow, which will be good. Fourth division, we've got BSC Glasgow versus Vale of Leven. Arvin Vicks versus West Park, Royal Albert versus St Peters, and St Colcoats against EKYM. So games, again, one of the things when the leagues are so competitive, there's going to be standout games every weekend.
Yeah, and I think there's some preliminary Scottish Cup games this weekend as well. I think I
Yes,
seen on Twitter that the Meadow are hosting Johnston Borough, so that'll be a really interesting
yes.
fixture with Jamie's old club coming to the Meadow. Am I right in saying I think they went to Johnston Borough last year in the Scottish Junior, the Meadow, and
I think
I
like a
think it
week
went to
after
penalties,
Jamie took
didn't
the
it?
job, it was like a
It
week
went to
after Jamie.
penalties. So yeah, Murdy and Jamie going head to head in the Scottish Cup. So again, two good friends of mine and two good experienced managers at this level, and that'll be a cracking fixture with uh, I'm sure with a good crowd. And I think there's a few Scottish Cup fixtures over the next few weeks, so it'll be really interesting. It's good to see some West and East teams all playing in that for the first time in a few years. I know St Cadox have got Pollock in that. I don't think it's next week. I think it's towards the end of the month. It might be round
30th
two.
August in Cadox
I
play
think that's
Pollock.
round two of the. This must be round one this weekend, then round two. So a
Yeah.
Friday night fixture at New Tinto, St Cadox and Pollock,
Was
local
that going to
two
be
good
Friday night?
teams. That's a Friday night, yeah.
Was it?
Seen that
Very good.
on Twitter. So, hopefully you can get a good crowd in for a Friday night, and that'll be a really interesting fixture. So it's good to see these West teams going and representing the league in the Scottish Cup. And I was at East Kilbride when they went all the way to the last 16 and played Celtic, and kind of changed the club, if I'm being brutally
Yeah.
honest, in a great way. Kind of put the club on the map and really drove it forward. So, every non-league team that enters the Scottish Cup this year, that they'll all be hoping for that we tasted that. Moff had it last year going to Hibs. So, and again, I think that probably gave Clydebank a shot in the arm at that time to go and compete with Hibs, and then they come back and really go and kick on the league. So, yeah, the Scottish Cup makes for a really interesting addition to some of our fixtures that are already scheduled.
And you obviously said as well that the wee shot in the arm. It's the possibility of the cameras as well. We know that if you get into the first round and you draw a big team, there's a chance you're going to have the TV cameras there,
Yeah.
which is absolutely massive for clubs at this level. Like
Yep,
we
and there's
saw,
some half decent prize money up for grabs as
yeah.
well for getting into round one, and then every round you can get by, and that's without any gate money. There's some decent prize money. So, these teams will be looking for good gates, good results, and giving themselves an opportunity to get close to those Premiership teams that come in at the last 32. So, yeah, it's going to be a good addition.
Well, Martin, I can't thank you enough for coming on to this episode, mate. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and fingers crossed. Obviously, hopefully everything kind of works out at Shinra, and fingers crossed we see you back in management because I think you're due another opportunity.
No, I appreciate that. Hopefully, who knows? Don't look too much further ahead than we've got Edinburgh City on Saturday and preparing for that. So yeah, don't look too much further ahead. But who knows? Hopefully, back in a management position at some point.
Yeah, fingers crossed, mate. Thank you very much for joining me. It's been
Thanks
a
for having me on,
pleasure.
Scott.
Thank you
Appreciate it.
very much. Thanks very much for everyone that's tuned in. Thanks to our sponsors at Indigo Communications and Greenversity Renewables. And we'll see you all next week for the latest episode of the 80. Thank you very much.